Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. The first story is called I will transport something I bought here. I bid on some furniture at an online auction. I was surprised I actually won it, but very happy too. It was mostly small pieces, but big enough that it wouldn't fit in my car. So I decided I'd rent a van. The major Midwest hardware store in my city has a special where you can get the van for $18.95. Their website said weekend rates were higher and I'd have to pay a deposit, but that was all well. I figured it was still cheaper than a rental place, so I went bright and early this morning and went to customer service. I asked the customer service lady about the process. She took copies of my license and my insurance and then plopped the rental agreement on the counter. Are you transporting things purchased here? No, just some furniture. Okay, without the purchase, it's a $300 deposit on a credit card. Okay, I know it's a vehicle and it's worth more than $300, but that's a big deposit for bringing it back in an hour. So I looked around and saw the snack cakes display. Actually, I will be transporting things I bought here too. Since you said you weren't, I have to have it on the same transaction. Not a problem. I grabbed a sleeve of little donuts and laughed as my total dropped from $330 to just over $100. I ran my card and finished the transaction in silence. When I returned the van, it got a very thorough walk around by the manager. I got my deposit back on my card from him and saw my cashier still staring daggers at me from the back. I was very glad I saved big money with the van today. The next story is called Minimum Wage is Discretionary. My first part-time job was in a cafe starting when I was 16. As jobs go, it was pretty good. It was minimum wage of course, but the owner was flexible with schedules, we got discounted food and my coworkers were generally lovely people. The only issue had occurred when I turned 18. In my country, UK, the minimum wage is set at one level for 16 to 17 years old, but then rises by around 30% for 18 plus. We'd always been paid cash in hand weekly, so I knew things were not exactly kosher. But when my first pay envelope after my 18th birthday came, I was still surprised to not see my pay bump. Thinking it was just an oversight, I informed the owner that I hadn't received my pay increase. They waved their hand and said, "Oh no, the minimum wage is discretionary," in a matter-of-fact way. I laughed at this and they acted like I was naive and said, "Trust me, it is. I can't pay you anymore, but you're free to try your luck elsewhere." So that's exactly what I did. My colleague, who had also just turned 18, and I had both found a new place paying more than double our current wage within a few weeks. The only issue was that I was asked to start with only a few days notice on a weekend I was scheduled to work. I called the owner to let them know I had found a new role and could work my other shifts but not at the weekend. They told me my notice period was 2 weeks, to which I responded, "Oh no, my notice period is discretionary." They didn't like that and told me to not bother coming back. That was the last I had heard of them until a few months later when I received a letter informing me the government was investigating them on my behalf for unpaid wages. It turns out a colleague I had enlightened about the minimum wage, of course not being discretionary, had also left and contacted HMRC. A couple of weeks after, I received my check from the owner in the post and I found out that within a few months the cafe had to close and let the staff go because of unpaid taxes. All because they didn't want to pay us $4.83 per hour. The third story is called Why Do You Want to Ruin Our Lives? A few years back now, I worked for a smallish locally owned company owned by two friends. The company was going strong when I started, but after 10 years there, the place was going downhill fast. One day, we discovered the bosses had not been making superannuation payments to us for over 2 years, owing tens of thousands over all the employees. This was the final straw for me, and I gave them my 2 weeks notice. As I was basically the last manager there, most of the employees also quit with me, and this really set off the owners, who thought I was somehow overreacting. I made them ensure they would pay me what was owed or I would get the tax agency involved. A few weeks later, I get an email detailing repayments significantly less than what was owed. When I emailed back, they told me they had taken hours I owed in time in lieu out of what was owed in superannuation. If I had a problem with that, they would have no issue speaking to the authorities about the hours I stole from them. This is of course highly illegal. For one, we had no contract laying out that I would have to repay owed hours. Secondly, they most definitely cannot take that money from my superannuation's repayments. I decided not to reply, saved the email and moved straight on to the tax agency. This took a very long time as the process is very slow. After about a year and several different tax representatives, I one day got a call out of the blue from one of the owners. This was a very angry, threatening call, asking why I had reported them to the tax agency and why I was determined to ruin their lives. I told him exactly why I did it and that he reaped what he sowed. A few days later, I get an email from the tax agency telling me they will be repaying all that was owed plus interest accrued over the now 3+ years that they didn't pay. They would have also been put on a blacklist of employers had they not sold their business a few months after we left. For more background, after I quit, I took 2 weeks off to be alone with my thoughts and relax for a bit, before accepting one of the many job offers I received once my departure had been made public in our industry. I walked away with a higher pay, a more secure job, and the position every company in the industry was fighting for at the time, as the company I chose won the contract and they gave the position to me. The next story is called "Maybe You Should Learn Your Job First." This is something I witnessed about 14 years ago. At the time, I was working at a factory producing interior parts for semi-trucks. Not mechanical parts, but things like seat covers and upholstered panels. We worked with a lot of spray adhesives, and the ventilation system was not up to the task of keeping the air clear. So there was a lot of glue floating around in the air. Naturally, this glue builds up on equipment. It is not a problem, because the equipment we use gets cleaned on a regular basis. What doesn't get cleaned for 8 months out of the year is the heating system. It builds a massive layer of glue from spring to fall. Now, our maintenance guys know this, and they are not stupid. So the rule is to turn the heating system on Friday evening. It burns off all the glue over the weekend and is fine by Monday morning. But then we got this new maintenance supervisor, we will call him NS. Not a bad guy in general, but new to being management and not from our company. About a month after NS started, it was a bit chilly on a Thursday morning, so he orders the maintenance guys to turn the heating system on. Of course, they tried to explain that they couldn't do that. They even tried to get the plant manager involved, but he had left early. So NS insisted they listen to him and turn the system on, and finally they did. 20 minutes later, we are evacuating the building. The haze of burning glue fumes is so thick that you cannot see more than 10 feet inside. 2 people actually had to be brought to the hospital. The rest of us are stuck standing and sitting in the parking lot for 3 hours in hopes that the cloud will clear enough for us to go back to work before they finally say we can leave. Plus, the truck factory we supplied had to shut down for 4 hours the next morning so we could get the parts they needed to them. NS did not get fired, but the plant manager advised him to listen a little more and talk a little less until he got to know how things worked. The last story is called "I Lost It." This happened about 15 years ago at a big box hardware store. I was returning a purchase, unused, unopened, and was going to make another purchase in store that same day. So I start the return, and it's a rather lengthy process for the person behind the counter. Maybe 5 minutes of them printing this and that, getting forms together. We get to a point where they are telling me that the purchase would be refunded to my Visa. I said that I was making a purchase right away and would prefer a gift card so I didn't have to wait for the credit to go back on my card. The person behind the counter said that they couldn't offer a gift card and it had to go back onto my Visa. Now, I've done a lot of returns with this retailer as I was a contractor. I knew they had a pretty good return policy where they'd give you a store credit if you didn't have a receipt. I brought this up with the person behind the counter and they confirmed as much. So as slowly as possible, while looking them in the eye, I reached onto the counter and pulled my receipt back and put it in my pocket and then told them that I lost my receipt. They had to redo the whole return from scratch and gave me a store gift card. And now, it's your time to shine. Let me know what you think about the stories. Did it happen? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories? I hope you enjoyed today's video. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.